In this video, we're going to explore two features that help you to create an outline around a shape or a design. And the two tools that we're going to use is this create outlines up here in the upper center and also the contour. These are pretty similar, but there are some differences in how it generates lines. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. I have this just hexagon type shape. I believe it's a hexagon. I should probably look here. It is a hexagon on the screen, and I'm going to go ahead and click this create outlines, and let's take a look at what our options are. When I click it, it brings up this screen where I can choose the number of ripples. That's how many ripples that go around the edge, the spacing for those ripples, and then I can change if it's a cascade style or a spiral, and I can join the repeats together, or I can remove the selection and when it creates it. So let's just take a look at what this does. I'm going to keep it at default. I'm going to have these two ripples at 0.25 inches apart with the cascade, and I'm going to press OK. And you can see that it creates these outlines around the edge. One of the things to notice is it rounds the corners. It automatically does this. And you can see that the lines are okay. They can get a little wavy at times depending on what it is you have selected. So I'm going to click that and go to delete, and I'm going to select it again, and I'm going to hit create outlines, and this time I'm going to choose spiral. I'm going to keep the same number of ripples and spacing just to show you the difference here. So you'll notice that spiral, what it does is it's going in a spiral motion. It's keeping it as one object as opposed to creating two ripples. It's creating two lines of it, but it's actually doing it in continuous motion. That's not going to work great for many applications in my opinion, but it is there as an option, so you can utilize it. Let's come back up to create outlines, and let's go back to cascade. And this time what I'm going to do is hit join repeats and hit OK. With join repeats, it's going to join the two together, and that means basically it's going to create this line that goes from one to the other. Now, if I convert this over to, let's say, a run stitch, it's actually going to create that as a run. So that might not be something that you want. You can join them. That is an option, but typically it's not something that I'll utilize. So let's go ahead and click off of that. This time, let's do 4 ripples, and let's have it remove the selection. And what that's going to do is this right here, this object is going to, it's going to create 4 around it, and then it's going to delete this one. So you can see how that worked. I no longer have that one that's in a straight point. If I hit undo, you'll see that that comes back. So it actually will delete it. And that is something that I will utilize from time to time because sometimes I'm just creating a shape in artwork that maybe there's an embroidery design that I've actually just kind of created an artwork shape around everything. And I might want to create those lines around it just because it's a little cleaner if you're just working with the artwork as opposed to a bunch of different objects. So I will use that from time to time. It is a good option to have. And I can change the spacing. Like I said, I can make this much closer together. And let me uncheck this remove selection, hit OK. You can see it'll bring them in much closer together. And it's just, it's a really easy tool to use, but let's go ahead and try it on this object right here and just see kind of what we get. I'm going to change this to a 0.25. I'm going to have the 4 ripples and hit OK. You can see that it took a lot longer, and it had a lot of thinking to do because it's trying to go around the embroidery, so it has to figure out all the outer shape first, but it does a pretty good job. Let's go ahead and delete that. And now let's take a look at contour. So contour, when I click that icon, it brings me up with a bunch more options. I can do a contour around the outside, around the inside, or both outside and inside. And I get the choice of what type of a corner I want. With the previous one, it rounded everything, but I can keep it mitered, I can bevel it, or I can do it rounded. I still have the option for how many ripples I want to use, and then the spacing. If I want it to be different, I can do that. And I can remove the selection. So let's go ahead and just take a look at this. I'm going to do outside, 4 of them at 0.25 inches. And I'm going to click the first one up here, which is mitered, which should be the default one. And let's go ahead and click OK. So you can see this does a really good job around a shape like this. It's very, very clean. Have no complaints with that whatsoever. There will be certain designs that might cause issues for you. And a lot of times what I find is that the shape isn't closed all the way. So that's something to keep in mind. Whenever I work with something, I will select it if it's just a piece of artwork that I'm trying to go around. And I'll make sure that I hit this close shape tool to make sure that it is closed off. Let's go ahead and select it and go back up to contour. And this time let's do inside and hit OK. And you can see that it did 4 repeats on the inside. And if it got to a point where if I said I want to do 8 ripples, it'll go to as small as it can do it, and then it will just ignore ones that it wouldn't be able to fit in. So this is a really cool feature, as you can kind of see here. And let me go ahead and select it again. One thing I want to point out is when I'm using inside only, I only have the opportunity to do a miter. This is grayed out. I can't choose bevel or round. This time let's go ahead and hit both. And you can see that I can click either one, but I'll show you in a second that it still will not affect the inner part of the outline. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And you'll notice that it did 4 on the inside and 4 on the outside of that shape. It's kind of cool. Let's go ahead and hit undo. And this time I'm going to do that same thing both, but I'm going to choose to remove the selection. So it's going to remove this one and just put them going in and out. I want you to see what happens here. Notice that it removed the original. So there's a much bigger gap here because the original one is no longer there. Just wanted to point that out, that that's what happens. You might want that to be that way. So just need to be aware of what will happen there. So let's go back to outside and let's see what happens when we choose a bevel for the corner type and hit OK. You'll notice that it kind of squares off the ends. Let me hit back here. I didn't remove the remove selection, so let's go ahead and do that. So you can see this is the original, and then it bevels the corners. And you can see that it does an okay job. It does look a little choppier, but it does a pretty good job. I don't really have much complaints there. Let's go ahead and select it, and let's hit this contour again. And let's choose round this time and hit OK. And you'll notice that it rounds the edges. Even though the original stays the same, it rounds the edges going around it. This is something that's pretty nice. I actually utilize this quite a bit when I'm wanting to do little motif patterns spread out around a design. I will use that feature quite a bit. And let's just take another look here. This time I'm going to choose both, and I'm going to choose round, and I want you to see what happens. Because remember, if I click inside, it actually grays these 2 out. If I hit both, I do get the option to select them, but notice when I hit apply that on the inside, it's still doing a straight line, and when it gets to the outside of the original, it'll start rounding it. And I just wanted to point that out, just so you know that that's how it behaves. And in my opinion, it should behave that way. Otherwise, you're going to have just one that is at straight lines, and all the other ones would be rounded, and it might not look right, at least to me. So I actually like the fact that it does it that way. Let's go ahead and hit undo here, and let's go ahead and zoom in. This is a design, just a free symbol. I just brought it in so you could practice with it if you wanted to. Let's go ahead and select it. And it did select both pieces, which is good. You can see it there. It is grouped together. Let's go ahead and hit the contour for this one. And I'm not going to want to go inside on a design. Let's go ahead and do outside, and let's just do 2 ripples. And let's do it at about 0.15. and I have it at round, and let's just hit OK. So you can see it does a really good job going around it. It's pretty clean. And so it's very useful around design. One of the reasons why I don't want to push it too much is it might crash the program if I try to do too much. But I'm going to try both. If it crashes, then that will be the end of this video. If it doesn't, then we'll keep going. But it is a little bit more complicated because we're working with embroidery at this point and not just a piece of artwork. But let's go ahead and give it a try. So if I look at this, it did go on the inside of it. It did create this little shape here that's actually pretty kind of cool. I can select this and I can break it apart. And there's this one piece right here that I'm not too fond of, and I can just delete that. But you can see kind of how that works. One of the things I'll just tell you that I do quite often when I'm working with an embroidery design where there's multiple pieces, because there are some things that can go wrong, especially if an area is kind of open, like it's not a closed shape. A lot of times I will do something like this, where I will create just a piece of artwork that goes around the entire thing. So there could be 20 pieces inside of here, but I just want to go around the edge of it all. And I a lot of times will do it with artwork, because when I'm using this contour or the create outlines, it's much simpler for it to work with. It doesn't have to think as much before trying to do it. And I find that if I have experience an issue where I'm selecting multiple pieces at a time and I'm not getting it to work right, I'll just draw a piece of artwork around the entire shape. I'll make sure it's closed, and then I'll use the tool, and I get much better results. So that's just a little hint that you can do. It's what I like to do, and it just ensures that things work as well as they can. So that's how you can create outlines around a shape through using the create outlines or the contour, and they're a lot of fun to work with, and they're easy to work with, and you can just play around. I have experienced crashing the system a number of times, but that's just because most of the time it's the art that I'm using that it might have some issues, or it might have some with the nodes, they might be kind of curved, and they might be curving into each other. There's a few things that can happen. And so, like I said, that's also why I like to draw around a shape if it's not one that's already really clean and closed. But a lot of times I find, just for your own information here, that when I experience an issue, a lot of times it's like something that's more like this, or it's really twisted like that, the outline. And so I will go into the design, and I will look at the shape, and I will make sure that the points are nice and clean, that they're not wrapping around a little bit, if that makes sense. So because those are things that can affect a tool like that. And usually if I do make that change, I get rid of the issue. And so one of the things that happens too is if I come in here and I split this line, and basically what that does is it makes it so that it's not joined together. I'm not sure if it'll do it right here, but let's go ahead and give it a try. Like I said, if it crashes, I'll see you in the next video. But what I'm looking for is to have it do like a little spike. I don't know if I can replicate that or not for you, but I'm going to sure try. So I'm going to go on the outside here, and I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to do this. That's too rounded. OK. It did it fine, but what you'll see sometimes is when there is an open area, sometimes they'll come and the line will come straight down and in. So if you ever see this little spike that comes in, that's usually has to do with something where a shape isn't fully closed. If I keep going with this and opening it up, I'll probably get it to do that, but I really don't want to crash the system in a video. So just keep all that in mind. It all has to do with the outline and how clean that outline is. Cleaner the artwork, the more you can do with it and the better results you get. So if you want to learn more about cleaning up artwork, just watch the video on editing the artwork, and that'll teach you how you can clean some stuff up. So hope you enjoy that video. I hope you use these two tools of Create Outline and Contour. They're a lot of fun, and you can do some pretty cool things, like, for instance, breaking that apart, turning something into maybe a motif that goes around. And that looks pretty big because I'm working with a pretty small design. But you can see the applications that you could utilize this with. So just something to keep in mind and play around with. And I'll see you in the next video.